What's up, good people? Welcome to another episode of Passion Portraits. For today's Passion Portrait episode, we're going to be talking about Christon and his passion in telling impactful stories that make people smile. Now, as a heads up, the Q&A structure on this Passion Portrait is going to be a little bit different from the form that's in the description. This is from an iteration that I started a few years ago, but never quite got off the ground. So just letting you know the Q&A will be a little bit different. But on that note, let's get to it. All right, so how did you first get started with this passion and what made you fall in love with it? Ben says, watching a lot of anime and movies. He had always loved stories. Growing up, he read and watched everything he could get his hands on. Even when he moved to the States, SpongeBob helped him fit right into his new environment. His passion for the art of storytelling really started to take form when he started watching story analysis videos on YouTube. He was amazed and captivated by the level of thought and planning his favorite storytellers put into their craft, and he was moved to create a story of his own. How have you gone about cultivating your skills with this passion? Did you have a mentor? Did you take a course? Or did you just figure it out on your own? Ben says he consumes a lot of media, but in addition, he also consumes a lot of analytical breakdowns of said media. It's always interesting to see multiple sources analyze a piece of fiction. Whether they speak about it positively or negatively, they always are really informed and critical, and their analysis opens his eyes to cool little details he often misses. Plus, it's always heartwarming to see people gush about how a particular story moved them. He would love it if one day people would gush about a story he writes in a similar way. He also says that he mostly just figured it out along the way through lots of trial and error and refinement. He's been lucky to have many friends and people in his life who have been very supportive. His editor is one person in particular he owes a lot to. If someone wants to start learning this passion of yours, what advice would you give them? What are some common pitfalls you would recommend they avoid? Ben says that John Green says, reading is just as important as writing when you're trying to be a writer because it's the only apprenticeship we have. It's the only way of learning how to write a story. Ben takes this quote and extrapolates it beyond just reading to consumption of media in general. In his process, he consumed a lot of books, comics, games, shows, movies, etc., and was always looking to see how he can create something similar with his own twist, of course. It is important to have a distinct style. The most common pitfall from his experience was thinking that the first draft was perfect. It never will be, but it can get close through constant refinement. He would suggest finding a writing partner or someone you can bounce ideas off of. It'll help you deal with writing fatigue, and it really helps with the creativity flow. Where can people find you online if they want to maybe ask you some questions? Ben says you can find him at the Artisan Project on Instagram, SageFist101 on Wattpad, and his website is in development. All right, so first off, thank you so much, Ben, for taking the time to fill out the Passion Portrait form and for telling your story about your passion. One of the nuggets of wisdom that I liked from your story is how you said you consume a lot of media. You do a lot of reading, probably just as much reading, if not more, as you do writing, basically, right? And I think that's pretty dang cool because one of the best ways we can learn in a lot of cases is by looking at the work of others. Like, for instance, I am a programmer. I'm also a sculptor. But in terms of programming, one of the ways you learn is by looking at other code, and maybe trying to replicate it yourself and tweak it, or just using it as an example for figuring a bug out, right? So I appreciate you dropping that wisdom in there, and thank you again for telling your story. All right, so that's all we have for today's Passion Portrait episode. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to it. As usual, we need more stories. If you have a passion or if you know someone who has a passion that they put time towards, you don't have to be an expert at it, right? It just has to be something that you find fulfillment in and find joy in. And if that's you, then please fill out the form in the description below. We need more stories so that way we can encourage more people to want to find and cultivate their passion so we can help them find and cultivate their calling. On that note, thank you so much for taking the time to watch today's Passion Portrait episode, and stay tuned for the next one.